All right, hello everybody. Oh, let me stop that. So we have the bannings, the official bannings. I mentioned this a few days ago, and it was really just speculation going over things that could possibly be banned in historic, pioneer, pauper, and modern. So it was just four different formats, and we actually have the official announcements today. So today is the official day where we get to see what exactly gets banned in those formats. Hello here. Yeah, we get I'm just gonna remove myself here real quick just so you can see. So here is July 13th, 2020 banned and restricted announcement. I might have to wait for a few more people to show up here. How's it going, everybody? Get another hello. How's it going? So this is by Ian Duke here on the official Magic the Gathering website. So we know it's real. We know it's 100% true. And it is, of course, the 13th of July. I might also check out MTG stocks later. Just waiting, just to see exactly price changes, stuff like that. How's it going, everybody? Okay, so let's just jump right on into it. If you're watching this later, it'll probably be better if I just jump right into it. So historic, these are the cards that are getting banned or suspended. Suspended is I think it's just for historic, right? And it's kind of like it's a little less restrictive, meaning that cards more often get suspended, and it happens more often than just bannings, right? Once it's banned, it's pretty much gone, and it's a lot less likely to return. So, Agent of Treachery, really, really painfully powerful card. Enters the battlefield, gain control of target permanent at the beginning of your end step. If you control three or more permanents you don't control, you draw three cards. I think even 7 mana, something like this in a 60 card, limited even, it's always powerful. You get a creature and you get to steal something else. You get to steal a target permanent. And now we get Winota, Joiner of Forces. Now I didn't play with Ikoria. I have to remind people, so I'm a little bit new. I'm still new to some of these cards. See what you guys have to say so far. Ooh, someone's playing a game. Hello, how's it going? Was that a Mogwai? Awesome. I like live streaming so far. It's pretty convenient. So basically, Winota, whenever a non-human creature you control attacks, look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may put a human creature card from among them onto the battlefield tapped and attacking. It gains indestructible until end of turn. Put the rest of the cards on the bottom of your library in a random order. So yeah, you're cheating creatures into play. So it's whenever a non-human attacks, you get to cheat into play a human creature. That's always pretty good. And in Boros, you're just going to apply pressure and keep it up. Again, I didn't play with this. I'm just assuming how it's powerful. And both of these cards were suspended. So if you're a fan of Magic Arena, it's a big reason why. And they're going to be replaced with wild cards too. And Fires of Invention, banned from suspended. I don't remember. This is again. I did play through Throne of Eldraine, and I don't remember Fires of Invention being that good. So it must be a more recent thing. But you can cast spells only during your turn, and you can only cast no more than 2 spells each turn. One second. Let me see if I can get my screen up on my phone here, just so I can see what people are saying. Will Tactics, how's it going, buddy? Want to make sure that you guys Oh, my friend just texted me. He's watching me apparently. Uh, so let me read the text real quick and see what he has to say. That's MTG Myth, by the way. So Winota cheated Agent into play. Super OP. It's from the same deck. So yeah, you can. That is true because Agent of Treachery is a human. So if you can just cheat into play and then steal whatever, I guess their best blocker, you can really go in on them. That is a pretty deadly combo. Damn lurker. Well, I think it's because his account on YouTube is his real name. So if he doesn't want to post his real name, it's probably because he just wants to keep his privacy. Uh, he could make an account on YouTube for MTG Myth, so he doesn't have to use his real name. So how's it going, everybody? So Fires of Invention, you may cast spells with converted mana cost less than or equal to the number of lands you control without paying their mana cost. This again, like I didn't play with this when it was good, I guess. I dropped out like right at the beginning of the year. So I pretty much committed channel seppuku and stopped really paying attention to Magic that much. I mean, I still played with the decks I already had, but I wasn't really that interested in anything else. And Nexus of Fate is banned. I wonder why. I wonder if taking extra turns is actually really good. And Burning Tree Emissary is suspended. Yeah, you basically get a free 2/2. If you can abuse it, you can get more mana too. Always nice just to have free costed creatures pretty much. Again, like I don't know the whole interaction. There might be something that can take even further advantage of it. But this has always been a pretty good card from Gate Crash, right? And for Pioneer, so Pioneer is the new modern, basically. It's a newer modern. Oath of Nissa is unbanned, so no bannings, no suspensions. That's only for the historic, the suspension thing, I mean. But yeah, Oath of Nissa got unbanned, and we're gonna go over the actual article, the reasoning behind the bannings and the unbannings. But it's a good value card. You know, if you're looking for lands, if you're looking for something off the top of your deck, uh, creature, this was always a good card. And modern Arkham's Astroblade, very versatile, a lot of mana fixing, and some people don't think you should be able to get the kind of mana fixing this easy. And for Pauper, which I haven't played Pauper in a while. Will Tactics, I don't think there are any EDH bans. This is just for the four formats: Historic, Pioneer, Modern, and Pauper. They usually do bans for EDH like around the mid part of the year, and then around January. They might have changed that, but yeah, I mean, I don't know if they didn't ban anything by this time, they probably won't for EDH. They usually just do it twice a year. And yeah, Expedition Map and Mystic Sanctuary are both banned in Pauper. Pauper is the all common format. Even though the picture that comes up for the Expedition Map is an uncommon from Modern Masters 2015, the original Expedition Map from Zendikar is a common. Really fun format too. It's just it sometimes can get old. I think I played a Affinity in Pauper with the Togatog or whatever it is, and it's a pretty cool deck, and it's fun. It's surprisingly powerful. That's the one thing about Paupers. I think a lot of people expect the format to be incredibly nerfed, and it is to a degree, but you get some power there at the common level. So these are all effective by today officially. And MTG Arena effective date is the 16th. So I guess that gives you time to prepare. If you need to exchange those for wild cards, I guess. Again, like I don't play Arena. I'm not really into Historic, so I don't know how exactly that works. But let's read over this. So this section is by Jay Parker. So we currently have 3 cards suspended in Historic. Winota, Joiner of Forces, Agent of Treachery, and Fires of Invention. As with all suspensions, we have been carefully watching how the changes affected the Historic meta, and our data is showing it to distinct improvements with those cards removed. Each of these are also cards that will tend to get more problematic as the format grows in breadth and power, either as keyways to easily access very powerful cards or as one of those powerful top end pieces. Because we feel the data shows a positive impact from the current suspensions, and because it is unlikely to be safe to reintroduce these cards to Historic anytime soon, Winota, Agent of Treachery, and Fires of Invention are banned in Historic, players will be receiving wild cards as normal for these bans, per the policy. Alrighty, let me just take a break and look at the chat. Nexus of Fate enabled a deck which gave you infinite turns, basically. Yeah, pretty much. Hey, what's up, Jesus? I'm probably the only person excited for these Historic bans. Yeah, I think my buddy MTG Myth also plays Historic on Arena. I'm more of like a paper Magic guy. We also got bans not too long ago for EDH. So, yeah, it's usually like twice a year. Winota is such a broken commander with the right hand, you can overrun your opponents in a few turns. Yeah, I would imagine so. In Boros, I guess there's some really deadly creatures you can get out there, like humans. Anyone know if they're reprinting enemy fetch lands in Zendikar Rising? They should. We've seen a lot of reprintings. I would imagine that we get those will probably be the big ones if we do, because they're going to look back at Battle for Zendikar, Oath of the Gatewatch, and they didn't age well. Those sets did not age well. Not a lot of value. I think they were banking on the full art lands being like a big deal, and we've had a ton of full art lands, so those sets have aged terribly. So we need actual value. Yep, Historic consists of all the sets available on MTG Arena. I feel these are fairness banning. People were worried about Splinter Twin in Modern. Yeah, some people, I think one of the predictions that I was seeing that Splinter Twin could be one of the cards that was unbanned. Oh, they already stated that they won't reprint fetch lands in Zendikar Rising. Well, there goes a lot of the hype that I just had for that set. But I guess it makes sense. I remember a lot of people complaining about, yeah, I know, right? A lot of people complaining last time in Standard, the fetch lands were allowed. It just made stuff like Delve incredibly powerful. And just having the fetch lands, it wasn't a very good idea. So I can understand if they never want to bring those back. Though these suspensions, now bans, improve the metagame, the top end of Historic is still becoming too constricted. Shortly after the suspension of Winota, the top 2 decks comprised roughly a 15% of best of 3 play, showing a healthy, diverse spread of decks. Now the top 2 decks are roughly 35%, and the rate of concentration is increasing. Over the last month, decks using Nexus of Fate have risen dramatically in terms of the metagame share, and it's now Historic's most played deck. The 2 main cards enabling this deck are Wilderness Reclamation. So you get to untap all your lands at the beginning of your end step. And you have an instant speed, take an extra turn. I wonder what could go wrong. Well, while Wilderness Reclamation is a powerful card, we are not seeing it appear in problematic decks in Historic aside from this one. This deck also runs multiple ways to accelerate to early casts of Nexus of Fate, and those options will only expand with the format. Finally, Wilderness Reclamation acts primarily to give players access to a wider array of lines to play, while Nexus of Fate acts to prevent the opponent from playing at all. From both a long-term health and gameplay standpoint, we feel that Nexus of Fate is the better card to act on here. It probably was. Not just probably, definitely. Nexus of Fate is a card we have been watching closely for a long time in Historic. While it is very powerful, we had hoped that traditional Historic would be a place where it could remain a balanced option for its fans. While this held true for a long time, with the deck showing strong but within bounds play and win rates, it has now risen to a level where it is starving out other options and warping the format around itself. Nexus of Fate is much like cards discussed above, where its power will only grow as the historic card pool expands, and like them, we do not feel like that is likely that the meta will soon reach a place where sufficient answers exist to make this deck a balanced, fun option for players. While we have generally acted to first suspend cards in Historic to test the impact, this is not a hard rule because we do not foresee a good opportunity to safely reintroduce Nexus of Fate to the format soon. Nexus of Fate is banned in Historic. The other deck that has long been a powerhouse in Historic is Gruul Aggro. While it has often been the most played deck, the separation between it and the other top decks has widened significantly in the last month. Gruul and Nexus are each now played more than 3 times as much as their closest competition in best of 3, and Gruul has one of the highest win rates in both best of 3 and best of 1. After considering the deck and surrounding meta and the surrounding meta, we feel like the best card to act on here is Burning Tree Emissary. While the explosive starts it enables are a factor in the deck's rise, its removal should leave the deck with ample power to remain competitive, just at a more balanced level with other aggressive options. Unlike Nexus of Fate, we do see a strong possibility that the historic meta could shift in a way that allows Burning Tree Emissary to find a balanced, fun home. However, as the meta stands today, the power it brings to Gruul Aggro is overall reducing the number of balanced, interesting, and varied deck options in format. For this reason, Burning Tree Emissary is suspended in Historic. One final note on Historic suspensions: when we first introduced the mechanism in December, we emphasized the limiting time nature of suspension by linking it to the periodic availability of Ranked Historic. Now that Ranked Historic is always available, that no longer works as a good boundary marker. Despite that, we will be adhering to the general timeline it imposed, and suspension will be resolved via unsuspending or banning the affected cards within roughly the same 2 to 3 month span. We will always act more quickly when we feel the data is clear, but this will act as an outer bound. Suspension is a temporary measure to ensure that balance changes are playing out well, and it will not be used for any long-term action. So what do you guys have to say about that? They said they will reprint the fetch lands this year, but not in standard. That seems to be probably the most logical thing. Call me basic, but it gets annoying to have lands worth 60% of a deck. Absolutely. That's always been a problem in Magic too. You go to especially if you want to play in Eternal formats, it's like the lands cost well over half of the deck. And it's just like a few really good lands that you need to have, or that you need to have to optimize. And it's always been a barrier for something like Legacy too, because you need the dual lands. You don't want to. You could shock yourself for 2, but why not just fetch and you lose a life, but you don't have to lose any more life to get a land into play untapped. So instead of losing 3 total off of a fetch land, getting a shock land, you're just going to lose 1, and that's so much better. Yeah, no fetch lands, more Eldrazi. That's another thing too. We're gonna see a lot of ramp, a lot of Eldrazi's, and a lot of we had problems with the Eldrazi too. Remember Thought Not Seer? We had some really powerful Eldrazi cards then. But I think a lot of the fears was that if we bring back the fetch lands. Oh, someone said no Eldrazi either. Oh, well, I don't know exactly why we're going back to Zendikar. But yeah, Will Tactics, thank you for the $5 super chat. So I told you I built a Niambi deck based on all ETBs, but after watching your video, I added a bunch of Planeswalkers instead. Yeah, I saw a tapped out deck list where they were putting in things like what are they called? Like the little creatures that they come into play and return something to your hand. Is it called White Mane Lion? Just cheap little creatures like that. And I think there was like a cool strategy that they were fooling around with ETBs. I forget exactly what their win con was, but because Niabi is basically the legendary version of something like a White Mane Lion, but also gains you life. So if you keep doing that, you can gain a ton of life, and then something like Aetherflux Reservoir is an easy win con, I guess. So Crovax13, I quit playing Magic because of the Eldrazi the first time they were printed. They're so much more tame now. You look at the newer ones; they're pretty tame. I think Ulamog, the newer Ulamog from Battle for Zendikar, still really good. But taking away Annihilator was definitely something they had to do, because you can't really have Annihilator like that in a 60 card, 1v1 format, right? Against standard, that's too much. At least in Commander, you can team up against the person playing them. Honestly, I pretty much backed out of the constructed formats aside from Commander because they become incredibly toxic at the more competitive levels. I don't really like competitive Magic the Gathering that much. I don't hate it, but I'm kind of indifferent. I tend to just avoid all like the big events. It's just I like staying local, hanging out with friends, that kind of stuff. So let's start off the Pioneer section, which is thankfully way shorter than the historic one. Since the launch of Pioneer late last year, we've seen significant changes in the metagame. Early in Pioneer's launch window, various green ramp decks were among the most popular and successful archetypes. In order to reduce the consistency of these decks, Oath of Nissa was added to the banned list early in the progression of Pioneer. Since that time, other cards used by green ramp decks have been banned, including Once Upon a Time, Veil of Summer, and Oko Thief of Crowns. I remember everyone complaining about that on social media. In addition, the release of new sets has added power to other archetypes and generally expanded possibilities for deck building. The metagame is now in a place where we feel that unbanning Oath of Nissa is a reasonable step to take as far as adding some power back to Nykthos Shrine to Nyx ramp decks and other archetypes that revolve around key creatures, lands, or planeswalkers. I like it. I don't think it's an overpowered card. The last part where you can spend mana as though it were mana of any color for planeswalkers isn't really that big of a deal. It's good. It's a nice mana fixing, but it's not something I would say is overpowered. Uh, it just has a good trigger. It enters the battlefield. You look at the top three, and you get something valuable. It really helps you out if you're tired of top decking, and you just play a few of these. Pretty solid. So we are otherwise generally happy with the shape of the metagame in Pioneer. With the most played decks each having strengths and weaknesses against each other, we are keeping an eye on the populations of combo decks and the environment, although the perception that combo decks have dominant win rates isn't backed up in Magic Online play data. We are also seeing a variety of lesser played decks having success, which indicates that the metagame may continue to shift. So, what do you guys think about Pioneer? I want to get into maybe another format. I do like playing Limited, I like playing Commander. I might get into Pioneer. Pioneer is something that might appeal to me more than Modern did. Honestly, I pretty much backed out of the constructed formats a while ago. Yeah, I already read that. Will Tactics, Test of Endurance, Aetherflux Reservoir, and Felidar Sovereign are my win cons. Test of Endurance is a funny looking card too. It's like two guys in a sauna. That's what it kind of looks like to me. So it's a little weird, but that's always how I viewed it. Same, I pretty much stay in Commander because of that. Void, do you take a break from Magic if you're tired of a format, or do you just change formats? Yeah, I kind of just answered that. I'm mostly a Commander guy, and I think it's always nice just to take a break. Maybe not a 5 month break, but if you want to take a month off, maybe a couple weeks, it always helps me like really understand why I like doing something is by spending long time. Spend a long time without doing your favorite hobby or going to events, and you'll soon realize, like, wow, I really do appreciate this game. I really do enjoy it. And I think fundamentally, Magic the Gathering is just one of the best games ever made. So many wannabes, so many lookalikes, but they're not quite as polished as Magic the Gathering. Not saying that Magic the Gathering is in its prime necessarily. I think we could go back in time, but we're definitely in a pretty solid place. Well, it just becomes more homogenous at higher levels. Yeah. Yeah, the more competitive your decks become, you're more likely to see people net deck. I mean, people want to play the best deck. They want to give themselves the best chance of winning. However, this usually it's not. If 200 people out of 500 people are playing the same deck, yes, technically the top deck at that event is probably going to be that deck or one of the top decks, right? But you probably have a better chance if you're playing a deck that nobody's prepared for. It's a random creation, but you just have meta hate. You're more likely to do better at that event because everybody's prepared to play the top deck. Just about. It's just that there's so many of them, right? So they're bound to do really well, to place high. Yeah, the same three decks. It usually is. I feel like COVID was the nail in the coffin for Pioneer, at least in paper. COVID is a nail in the coffin for game stores too. Yeah, summer concert lineups. Oh gosh. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to over the last 5 months that had so many concerts lining up. Uh buddy of mine was gonna go see Judas Priest. Judas Priest, I forget where. But they're getting old. So if they can't go and they can't tour, they're on they're on borrowed time. COVID is really killing paper in my arena, in my area. Everyone is going online. What a joke. My local area people still prefer to play paper than arena. Now I know of two legs running discords so that people can use webcams to keep playing paper. Yeah, I've been doing that with MTG Myth. We get like a camera set up with our phone. It's not the best thing in the world, but if you want to play Magic, it's there. uh, Will Tactics says COVID was the counterspell to 2020. Exactly. That just goes to show how powerful a set like Korea was. While I hear a lot of YouTube moan about how they are tired of standard and cards that come out, what would be something you would change if you could about Magic design? Um, I really don't have too much to complain about. It's more about me being indifferent. It's not that I directly like hate anything about what they're currently doing. I would say if there's one thing, it would have to be the planeswalkers. I think this push to water them down. I would rather see fewer and fewer planeswalkers. I personally don't like the card type. I think it creates more problems. And I think there's been an effort to make more answers for planeswalkers, like planeswalker specific removal, but it's always been something that's been an issue for Magic the Gathering, format to format. I think in EDH, it's not quite as bad because again, a multiplayer format, people can answer, and you don't just have to rely on your own deck to get out of a problem. But that's what I would do. Fix the planeswalker problem by just not making as many. Remember when they used to be special? Like I remember, just go back to the Theros block, even really not that long ago, 7 years ago, 6 7 years ago, and something like Elspeth. It's like we had Elspeth and what was the other one? The blue black one. Those planeswalkers you didn't see too many planeswalkers around, but the ones you got were really good, like really good. And now it just seems we get so many bulk planeswalkers, and it's weird to say that, but yeah, I think a lot of planeswalkers are just bulk. Eventually, Historic will become Pioneer when they implement all relevant cards. Maybe I will give it a try on Arena, but I wouldn't spend any money on it on paper. I'm not a big fan of Arena. I haven't played it, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that there's not really commander support. Not commander support that I'd be interested in. Okay. What do you think could have been unbanned in Modern? Some people were talking about Splinter Twin. I don't think that's a good idea. I really don't. Like if it's infinite combos that just win instantly, I wouldn't rush to unban it. It's not like you're offering something that would make the format interesting because you would just see the same decks again that people complained about. And all it really is it's a nice little gimmick. It's a nice little thing that certain decks can do, but it's not. It doesn't make the game interesting. I don't know. That's just my opinion. But if I had to unban something, I don't play Modern, so I'm not really an expert. Um, I don't know. I'll have to get back to you on that one. Commander Void is based. I try to be. Do you think Pioneer is a dying format? I don't play a lot of these formats, but I think someone just said it before. The whole the lockdown situation didn't do Pioneer any favors. Planeswalkers encourage attacks with creatures, lost art. Yeah, that is one positive. Is that the easiest way to deal with them is usually just swing with your whole team. That way you don't have to waste a removal spell on a planeswalker. Well, I wouldn't say it's necessarily wasting it, but you'd rather use it on something else, right? Something that can actually deal damage to you. All right, so all right, what do you think of the mass products announced this year? So many people seem to get tired of the sheer amount of sets and products in this year. Yeah, that's another issue is oversaturation of the market. you're going to see this, especially with the lockdowns going on, is not necessarily the best thing to have a ton of these products. I mean, they already had them planned. There's not much they can do about it now, but a lot of excess inventory. So all of those products better be good sellers, big sellers, because you're going to see these stores that are not running many events. That if they are running events, it's usually people wearing masks, and there's only like 8 people allowed, so it's very limited. The problem here is you're going to see a lot of people, a lot of inventory in these stores that they're not really able to push. They're not able to move it in store, so they might have to go on eBay. And that's it's not the hardest thing in the world to have to adjust to that, but it's not something they want to be doing. A lot of these game stores just want to sell to people in store. Yeah, I lost track of them too. And a Korea really good set as far as the interest and the popularity, the sales, especially considering the lockdowns. So let's go over the modern part. Over the past several months of Modern's metagame, we have seen a rise in popularity and win rates of multicolored decks using Arkham's Astroblade, with some variants approaching 55% non-mirror match win rate. While these decks have taken on several different forms, their common game plan is using Arkham's Astroblade to play powerful cards across several colors. As a result, Arkham's Astroblade has become one of the most played cards in Modern. While there's nothing intrinsically bad about multicolor good stuff decks having a place in the metagame, their power and flexibility is usually counterbalanced by making concessions in their mana bases, often through lands that enter the battlefield tapped, cost life, or involve some other deck building restriction. Arkham's Astroblade makes this trade-off come at too low a cost, as one of the Arkham's as one of as one Arkham's Astroblade can often mean excellent mana for the rest of the game. So it's a 1-for-1. You get a card in exchange for playing it, and it's decent mana fixing. In addition, it leads to other synergies by virtue of being a cheap artifact permanent, and it can be blinked or recurred for card advantage. In short, Arkham's Astroblade adds too much to these decks for too little cost, resulting in win rates that are unhealthy and unsustainable for the metagame. Therefore, it's banned in Modern. We're keeping an eye on Arkham's Astroblade in Legacy for similar reasons, although at present the play rates and win rates of Arkham's Astroblade decks don't warrant action. We're aware of concerns among the Legacy community on this point, but want to be consistent with our philosophy of only resorting to bans when a card or deck reaches problematic win rates that can't be solved by natural metagame forces. I remember, God, the last time I really paid attention to Modern was when I think Affinity was the big deck. But other than that, I've been tuning out of it. So the next section here is Pauper. Just a reminder: the banned cards for Modern: Arkham's Astroblade. I guess we can just go over the full list here. So Astroblade for Modern, Pauper, Expedition Map, Mystic Sanctuary, Pioneer, Oath of Nissa, Historic, Agent of Treachery, Winota, Fires of Invention, Nexus of Fate, and Burning Tree Emissary. Just for people who are showing up, those are the cards that were banned. So now onto the Pauper section. With last year's bans of Gush, Gitaxian Probe, and Daze and Pauper, I noted a potential concern in that the weakening of blue tempo decks could create a rise in popularity of Tron decks. While we didn't immediately see a problematic metagame shift in the direction, Tron decks have remained steadily popular and strong, sometimes nearing 25% of the field among top finishing decks in Magic Online Pauper tournaments. So Pauper just gained a lot of popularity because of Arena or Magic Online. A lot of people, I remember trying to play it in paper, and there were a few people that would play it, but it's way more popular in online tournaments because the cards are dirt cheap. Dirt cheap, so you're not spending that much on a Pauper deck. This trend, in combination with community feedback, has prompted us to take a look at the role of Tron decks in the Pauper metagame. While it can be a good thing for the metagame diversity to have an archetype that plays differently from any other strategies, we are seeing some negative effects in terms of repetitive gameplay, recursive play patterns, and lock states. This puts pressure on other decks to be able to deal with such game states or else race the Tron decks and generally restrict viable deck building space. Therefore, we're taking the step of banning Expedition Map in order to reduce the consistency and popularity of Tron decks in the metagame. So you're using Expedition Map to search up the Tron lands, which is pretty good. Pretty good in Pauper. Second, multiple archetypes have recently adopted Mystic Sanctuary as another means of creating a repetitive loop or lockout states. While decks often only play a couple copies of Mystic Sanctuary, it is proving to be another key contributor of negative pressure on the metagame by enabling endgame loops. As a card that is likely to continue causing problems down the road, we're choosing to also ban Mystic Sanctuary and Pauper. Our intent is that this combination of bans should considerably reduce the speed and consistency with which Tron decks assemble their mana engine and eventually loop or lock states, as well as reducing the amount of repetitive gameplay coming from various blue-based tempo decks. So what do you guys have to say about that? Arkham's Astroblade has to be the most unassuming little card ever made. Yeah, it's just a cheap 1 mana artifact that replaces itself. It's a 1-for-1. It's basically a cantrip. Is it going, Dr. Bell? Yeah, Tron is such a boring and toxic deck. It's always boring when you see the same deck over and over again, and that's the only reason why I think I stopped playing Pauper. Is that there are just a few really good decks, and you tend to see them over and over again. I like to be a little bit more creative, and I think in Pauper, sky's the limit, right? Well, I guess uncommon is technically the limit, but you know what I mean. So many good common cards to choose from. Death to Tron. Not a lot of Tron fans here. I'm kind of indifferent towards the movie. A note on Standard. After careful review of the metagame, we're choosing not to make any changes to Standard at this time. Players Tour Online 3 and 4 saw the overall win rates and Day 2 conversion rates in the most played decks, Bant Ramp and Teamer Reclamation, come down to healthier levels. In the weeks following, we've seen other archetypes rise in popularity and win rate, including Mono Green Aggro, Rakdos Sacrifice, Mono Black Aggro, Red White Pawblade, Simic Flash, and others. Core Set 2021 has brought a variety of new tools, and generally we're seeing steady motion in the metagame leading up to the Players Tour finals. Or Players Tour finals. Thought it was finale. While we agree with concerns that Growth Spiral, yeah, that's a really good card. Ramp decks in aggregate have recently represented a larger than ideal portion of the metagame. We do see different archetypes within that larger category behaving differently in terms of strength, weaknesses, and roles in the metagame, with signs of the metagame shifting away from ramp in recent weeks. The release of Core Set 2021 and Standard, with rotation coming in the fall, we've decided to allow the metagame to continue its natural evolution. So, no decision on Standard. So again, just here, these are the cards getting banned. I already went over those a few times. So how are you guys doing? Tron is that trash. Control is an entire deck style that is designed to be oppressive. So I have a hard time feeling bad when people complain about oppressive decks like Tron. It's a part of Magic. Yeah, I guess I think it's more about just seeing the same deck over and over again. Control, I think control is fine. To be honest, I don't have a problem with any control decks because it's usually just an answer to whatever the meta is. I think control is there are many different control decks. I think you go format to format. They're not always the same. They're not always that oppressive, but sometimes you need control. Tron is usually half the field in Modern and Pauper in the Costa Rican meta. I've heard about Tron forever. Let's just put it that way. So anyway, guys, I think I'm going to wrap it up here. 45 minutes. Wow, time flies by. Uh, thank you all for showing up. Had a lot of people. I think we had like 22, maybe 25 at some point. Seems to be around the average. People showing up for these live streams. I still like doing them, and I'll probably continue them. But I am going to start making more deck techs, top 10 videos. It's so hilarious that they didn't ban anything in Standard, while most people seem to hate the current meta. I quit playing Standard online due to all those overpowered and control-heavy decks. I haven't played Standard in a while, since like around Theros. I think maybe I tried a couple years later. The Zendikar set. So anyway, guys, have a wonderful day. Void here signing off. See you all next time.